We've made it to episode 4 of Things I Hear on the Misophonia Without Borders channel. Thanks for tuning in. I'm John, but you can call me Smooter. I'm just a guy with misophonia, and I'm here to talk about it.
Why does he always point to his ear when he says things I hear, the name of the show?
For emphasis, I guess, but now I'm doing what is the worst Jim Gaffigan impersonation ever, I guess. As always, I'll do my best not to make any triggering noises or gestures, and for you folks who trigger when you hear descriptions of triggers, well, triggers will probably be mentioned, but when it happens, old Doug over there, he's going to throw this trigger description alert sign over my head a few seconds ahead of time so that you know to mute me if you need to. When the sign disappears, it should be safe to unmute me. We also need to make sure you know that the Misophonia Without Borders channel, this show, and I do not make any claim to have a cure for misophonia, nor do we offer any type of medical treatment for misophonia. Doug, people are asking me about you again this week. Yeah. Actually, 3 ladies asked me if you're single. Yes, seriously. One of them was 85, I think. Said something about hot lips, but I don't think I can repeat the rest of what she said. But you go, Doug the Stud. Okay, so episode 4. Where do we leave off in episode 3? Oh, yeah, the gum and how I got by having miso for 30 years without knowing what it was. Before I hit the main topic, there's something else I'd like to talk to y'all about. I appreciate all of you watching and all of you who have subscribed to the Misophonia Without Borders channel. Some of you have reached out to me and said some really nice things. And yes, some of you really do ask about Doug and say some cool stuff about him. Shut up, Doug. We only launched about a month ago, but it looks like the channel is being pretty well received by you folks. And in some aspects, it's already exceeded my expectations for that amount of time. So you guys have given me a lot and I'm grateful. But now I need to ask for a little more participation. We need to grow this thing, and to do that, we need to increase the number of views and likes for the videos. We definitely need to increase the number of subscribers, and all of this needs to be ongoing. When a content creator, can I call myself that now? Content creator. When a content creator asks, please like and subscribe, it's because most or all of us need that to keep making these videos and keep our channels going. Growth. Of course, it makes us feel good to have our numbers pumped up and stuff. Why wouldn't it? But also, without that kind of growth, how do we know we're doing a good job for our viewers? How do we know we're serving our purpose? Every channel has a purpose, whether it's just to entertain and amuse, advertise a business, support a cause, like in this case, the causes of misophonia awareness and support of our misophonia community. And I'm not just talking to those of you out there who suffer with misophonia. If you're getting something from our videos, learning about a medical condition that still needs a lot of research because you or someone you care about has misophonia, or because you're just interested, and maybe even a little entertainment, then please help us grow this thing. Support us. Do it for me? Sure, okay, I won't lie. That's part of it. But most importantly, please do it for the cause. Help us get the word out and increase misophonia awareness. Like I'll say again at the end, please like the video, subscribe to the channel, and tell a friend. And I promise it'll be a while before I make a big speech about this particular subject again. Okay, so let's focus on the gum a bit more. My first trigger, the first trigger that I remember was the gum. And I'll try not to be overly descriptive about it, but there's probably going to be some descriptions. But we will, of course, put the trigger alert signs up above my head so to try not to trigger people who suffer from that particular problem. Right, Doug, you got that? Okay, he says he's on it, so I'm going to count on him here. But yeah, it's still probably my number one trigger, one of the worst. And I don't hear it that often, but I run into it sometimes and I just want to get out of the room usually. It's never for me been about who had the gum. It's been about whether their mouth was open. Originally, if the mouth was closed, there wasn't a problem for me, but that's not necessarily always the case anymore. Talk about visual triggers, but we'll come back to that more in a minute. It wasn't too long when I noticed that there was a problem with me hearing this gum thing, that it pretty much applied to any open mouth chewing. Gum was just probably the most common thing to hear. I think even I could be wrong about this, but I'm just trying to figure this out. Why? I think maybe a lot of people who chew gum with their mouth open actually do manage to chew their meals with their mouth closed. So maybe gum is just special because people like to do tricks and stuff with it. I know I used to before this was a problem for me. But yeah, so it wasn't too long before I realized that was a problem. Um, but I wasn't running into it with regular food eating as I was with gum. But by the time I was in my 20s, I wasn't really able to enjoy gum myself that much anymore. Got down to probably a few times a year that I would chew it. And I used to be a fairly regular chewer before that, but it wasn't that I self-triggered. I don't usually self-trigger. And for those of you that don't understand, self-trigger is when you make the triggering noises yourself and actually do trigger yourself, because that's not something that happens with all of us. I don't normally self-trigger, but nonetheless, I just didn't feel right chewing gum anymore because I was having this problem with it. Uh, thank God I can still eat a chili dog, right? For some reason, maybe because it was the first and the worst, I just could enjoy gum the same way I used to. And I'd have mixed feelings about the smell and even the flavor. I could smell gum and wow, that smells great. That part of me was loving that and wanting to chew a piece. And then there's this other part of me that at the same time was going, get that away from me. I don't even want to smell that. It's terrible. And so I did have to go back to chewing gum more regularly for a while in 2007 when I quit smoking, because that actually did help with that. And sometimes I still chew gum if I'm at the gym. I found it actually does help with the workouts for some reason. Of course, I'm wearing headphones and trying not to look at other people, even with the headphones on, if they're doing the same thing, which a lot of people chew gum in the gym, because I don't want to visually trigger. I do visually trigger as it relates to my audio triggers. Some people I understand visually trigger just regularly, but the only thing that's going to make me visually trigger is if it's something that would trigger me if I'm hearing it. And if I'm not hearing it and I'm looking at it, I might feel like I'm hearing it, not as strong, but definitely enough to make me uncomfortable. So if you've got gum in your mouth, and if your mouth is open, or especially if it's open, sometimes even when it's closed, and I'm talking to you, I might look away because I don't want to be rude. I want to continue the conversation. Thank God if you're a person that I'm not hearing, but I can't look at your face while you're doing that. Um, and so I do that quite a bit. There actually are a lot of people who don't make noise with their gum, thank God, but I still can't look at them while they're doing that. And I'm not blaming them. You know, for most of the world, these things are just normal. That's why misophonia is a problem. It's not normal, right? Let me explain what my triggers feel like a little bit. And there's two things I'm going to go into briefly here that are two what I feel are the more annoying aspects of misophonia. They relate to a lack of consistency. Number one, we're not all triggered by the exact same things. There are some common noises that most, but not all of us are triggered by. Okay, I'm going to give the list, so that little alert should be above my head. Obviously, gum or any open mouth chewing, slurping, repetitive pen clicking. And I say repetitive because everybody's got to click a pen once in a while, but it's the ones that just sit there and keep doing it over and over again. That's a problem. And those are the only examples I'm going to give right now, just a few. But those are fairly common for most misophones. Although I do know one girl who she definitely has misophonia. I don't doubt her a bit. I've known her for years, but she is one of the few who actually is not triggered by the sound of gum. I don't understand it. In fact, I'm a little jealous, but hey, that's the way it is, inconsistent. So we're not all triggered by the exact same things, but there are certain things that definitely do trigger most of us. The other inconsistency is we don't all seem to, our triggers don't seem to feel the same way for all of us, I guess. A lot of times we hear about rage and anger and such, and that's true. Um, in my case, though, it feels, I mean, that's an accompaniment, but what causes that feeling is that I'm actually feeling discomfort, extreme discomfort. And I normally just to give a quicker explanation, because this can be hard to talk about even now that I know what to call it. I might just say that certain sounds cause me pain, and that is true. But more accurately, certain sounds cause me extreme discomfort, which can include pain, especially if they escalate and I can't get away. So they say it, causes our flight or fight response to kick in, and I am more of a flight guy than a fight guy. In fact, I think most of us actually are. So I will try to get away from the noise. And if I have to explain this to someone, then I'll do that. But more than likely, my first move is to try to get away. unless it's someone that, this happens with all the time, then eventually I'm going to have to tell them, hey, look, I can't be around you for this reason. But for me, what the trigger actually feels like is if you've ever had a hangover, you know what? Some of you people are minors. If you've ever had a headache, it's not the headache or the hangover itself that I would compare the feeling to, but it's the sensitivity that comes with it. You wake up in the morning with a migraine, and your mother comes in, or your father comes in, or your little brother who wants to aggravate you comes in, and they've got a big old metal pot in their hand and a wooden spoon, and they start beating on it, and you're laying there with your hangover, migraine, whatever, that sensitivity that makes you go like this, that's what it feels like for me. Or, if you open the curtains because the sunlight also affects you, that's what I feel, not the pain of the headache or whatever ailment, but that hypersensitivity that comes with it, where you can't tolerate the sounds. That's it. I'm having a problem tolerating the sounds, and that makes it pretty uncomfortable. Uh, Two incidents I will tell you about. One, and I've told this. I actually told this story on the Misophonia podcast and a few other places, and only found out a few years ago that when I'm too descriptive about it, it makes people uncomfortable. And it's not that I like to talk about these kind of things, but I was trying to make the point. So I'll make the point, but be a little bit less descriptive than I have been in the past. There was a girl I used to work with, and she sat pretty close to me. Our desks were very close to each other. Maybe I'm not even sure if we were 5 feet apart. And sometimes she would chew gum, and she would be very passionate about her gum chewing, and it was a real problem. And sometimes I could just take a break, and this was actually when I still smoked, so I could go smoke a cigarette and get away, and maybe find some other chores to do around the office without being at my desk. And she'd stop. But one day I could not leave my desk. I had to stay there for whatever it was I was working on, and she was just going on and on and on. And I was asking her to stop, and she wouldn't. And she'd say things like, "Oh, John, you're so stupid." And it got to be too much for me. And so I got physically ill, literally. I'll leave the details out, but I got physically ill, and I had to go home for the day. And it created a few relationship problems within the office for a while that I think they eventually passed. But I said to myself, what is this? I didn't know it was misophonia. Now, this was actually around the time that Dr. Johnson and others were running into this thing called misophonia and trying to figure out what it was. But even then, I still wasn't going to know about it for another 15 or so years. I just knew it was this weird personality quirk that I couldn't get away from. And now it had affected me physically and cost me most of a day of work because I had to go home and burn the sick time to get away from it. And I said, never again. And by never again, I meant I'm never going to let it bother me to that point again. It was humiliating. I mean, I can talk about it now, but at the time it was humiliating. And it made me feel weak that I could let it get to me that much. So again, if something like that's in the room, I'm going to try to get away because I remember what that day felt like, and I don't ever want to feel that again. And then about 15 years later, I'd find out it was misophonia, and suddenly all that would make sense. The other incident is a different job that I worked at. I worked with a very nice lady, but I think I made her cry. Um, I would skip lunch a lot of times. Under California law, I'm not sure about the laws of all the other states or the federal law, but you haven't been able to do that for a long time without it being a problem HR wise. But I'm just the kind of person that if I didn't need to take lunch, a lot of times I wouldn't. I might go out for a cigarette, but only on my assigned breaks or if I was walking between buildings. But I would not always take my lunch. And there were days when I took lunch when I was planning to just work straight through. But this person brought in her Subway sandwich. She loved her Subway. Oh, Subway's cool. But she would bring that thing in the morning with her. And then when she would get to it, she would make noises that other people don't make. And I'd have to leave. I mean, literally, when I describe what it's like hearing someone eat, hers was completely different from everyone else's, and it was horrifying. And so I finally had to confront her. I mean, we shared an office. We were together. We were together most of the day, and we got along most of the time. But when she would eat, I would have to jet out of there, and at least with the sandwiches. And I told her as nicely as I could, and it quit being a problem. But I think I made her cry a little bit, and I still feel bad about that. 20-something years later. That's misophonia. So this is the part where I do my little mini commercial for the Misophonia Convention that's coming up in November. Doug, if I see Chuck Norris's name written anywhere in this script, I'm going to beat you down. No, really, the man may sue us if one of your little pranks gets by me. Well, of course he can just beat me up instead. He wouldn't be Chuck Norris if I could beat him up. Yeah? Well, shut up, Doug. Anyway, the convention is going to be at the Embassy Suites in Albuquerque, New Mexico from November 2nd to November 4th. Did I say November? November. That sounds kind of cool. November 4th, 2023. In case you're watching this years after the fact, I don't want to mess you up and have you looking for something that's not going to happen in 2025 on that exact same set of dates. Of course, there's going to be informative presentations about misophonia, but it's also an awesome time to just hang out and get to know other people who have it, other people who get it, just like you, and the ones who love them. Some of the people doing all the hard work and research and treatments and stuff are going to be there too, and you might get to talk with some of those folks. And we are going to have a special celebrity guest, Doug. Seriously. Thanks, man. So, celebrity guest, as in a celebrity who has misophonia and wants to support our community and misophonia awareness. And I'm hoping to be able to tell you who this famous person is in the next few weeks. The Misophonia Association gets to announce it first, but I'm going to jump right on that as soon as they do. Links to the convention info and registration are in the video details below, as well as links to the Misophonia Association website, as well as a link. Got to use better English there, huh? Thanks for tuning in to Things I Hear episode 4. Again, please don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the Misophonia Without Borders channel, and tell a friend because, well, I already spent like 5 minutes explaining that, and I promised I wouldn't do it again for a while, so bye-bye now.